Hello. Today is our Q&A day. And sometimes I think, is this going to be like opening a can of worms? But you never know. So I think there are plenty of questions to go around. Some of them are going to still be up in the air, right? Because we still don't know exactly what August is going to look like for us. But welcome. I am Charmaine Tanner. I host this weekly The Art of Advocacy live Facebook show. And the first Thursday of every month is our Q&A time. So you guys get to decide what the questions are. Hey, Kim. Kim is from Iowa, and she's also one of our trailblazers. So, hey, Kim, and tonight we have a show in our Trailblazer group too. So let me know what your questions are. And while you are typing them in, one hot topic, I guess we could call that hot topics, right? One hot topic that I've been wondering about myself is some school districts are talking about having a small class size of students, and those students stay together for the day. And if they need, music, art, something like that, those teachers come into the room with that small group of kids versus the students going out to other teachers. So my concern, my question is, so let me know what your thoughts are, is if your child is included in general ed and maybe has minimal pull out to a special ed room, what is that class going to look like for your child? Are they going to place your child in a small group in that general ed classroom? Or are they going to say their small group is in the special ed room and that's where they'll stay the whole day? So these are some of the things that we need to be thinking about. And just like the school district around the country are coming up with multiple options of what might happen in August, I think as parents, we need to be coming up with multiple plans of what we are going to think is going to work for our kids. So I think generally a lot of school districts are looking at students return full time. Students return in a blended environment where they go to school maybe a couple days a week and online learning a couple days a week. Or the third option that we're probably all dreading is that there is no in-person kinds of school support. So let me know what your questions are. They might not be about going back to school, and that's okay. But what other things are popping up for you? Are you wondering about? And let's have a discussion about that. So welcome if you are here with us live or watching the replay. If you're watching the replay, make sure that you can still type in questions and I'll come back and respond to those. So what is it looking like for your district? Can you type in the comments what your district's plans are? I know some school districts have also set up complete online schools. I know the Boise School District in Idaho had announced that they're going to have this whole separate online school where they have a principal, they have specific teachers assigned to that. So what does it look like for your kiddos? And what do you think is going to be happening? And Anita, hey Anita, she is another trailblazer with us. She says Fairfax County in Virginia does not have all the details, but we are being asked to choose between one of two plans, part-time in person or all online. Once choice is made, it will be in place for the entire year. See, yeah, that's that's a concern, right? Because if you are locked into a choice that doesn't work well for your child, I think you would have every right to call another IEP meeting and talk about placement. I don't know how they could say that a decision you make now, and Anita said, you have to decide by July 10th. So, yeah, it's so hard. I mean, I know districts want to know how many online teachers they're going to need, how many in-person teachers they're going to need. So that's why they're asking for parents to make decisions now. However, for it to be a binding decision for the entire year, I'm not sure that I would totally agree with that. I think you could make a choice now, but if it isn't working, one, to tweak the plan, or two, to call, an IEP meeting and talk about the placement. I think, one of the things that we need to think about is in the spring when we went to distance learning, it was like totally a jumbled kind of last minute thing, right? So as parents, we gave teachers a lot of grace, right? I mean, this was something totally, new that they had to come up with. Now that teachers have known about distance learning, and a lot of teachers are putting in a lot of hours this summer, getting prepared if they have to do more online teaching. As parents, I think we need to up our expectations of what, if our child does have to do distance learning, what that's going to look like. I know I've talked to parents that I work with as an advocate, and they're like, my child has to get some teacher time. These packets that are sent home once a week are not going to cut it. So let me know what you are thinking. Maria is here with us. Maria, howdy. She says, I work at a private school and our archdiocese is planning for in-person. Teacher and students will wear shields, and plexiglass has been inserted on desks to create cubicle. Parents that are not comfortable can do distance learning. Cameras are being set up in the classroom to accommodate students learning from home. So thanks, Maria. See, and that I think is that's another idea that I've been wondering about, is having, I know some schools have used like robots for kids that are on homebound, and the robots are geared where they can go where the conversation is. But yeah, cameras in the classroom where, I don't know exactly how it would work, but, if it would just be in one place, or if it can move when the teacher moves. I know there's a variety of video cameras that do that for online streaming kinds of things. But that would be a way that your child could tap into the class lesson that is happening in real time at school. And hopefully then there's also a system where if your child would have a question, kind of like I don't know, almost a Zoom call where they could raise their hand and ask a question. So yeah, that's interesting. And the plexiglass, I think, is going to be helpful. I told my husband a while ago, I said, we should have invested in plexiglass. I mean, think of all the businesses and places that have had to install plexiglass as a barrier. So, if your school is looking at that as an option, that would be something good too. And so thanks for bringing in this. Yeah, Anita says in Virginia that additional information for special education is still to come. We are currently participating in ESY, and it's off to a rough start. So Anita, is your ESY distance learning? Let us know. And this I think is going to be a popular option too. Alternate weeks, A, B. Week A, Group A goes in person for 3 days. Group B goes 2 days. Then for week B, it flips. When students are not in school, it's distance learning. And so this is another way that kids can get some direct teacher time. I think it's again going to kind of be up to individual families to see if that exposure is going to be worth the risk for some kids that have more health concerns. Even being in school a couple days a week, that might be something. But at least schools are trying to find ways that kids will actually have time to connect with teachers, and teachers will be able to do direct instruction and teaching. Because I think we learn from distance learning that is like really, kind of the downfall is that most of our kids were not getting much. And so Maria, somebody had asked if this is on Long Island. And I can't remember, Maria, where you live, so let us know. Let's see. Who has to decide by July 10th? All schools asking from New York State. Now, that was an example from Fairfax County in Virginia, that they had July 10th as a date for their county in Virginia. And Susie has a question. She says, any ideas for kids with one-to-one paraprofessionals, how to move forward with exposure risk for both sides? Excuse me. So yeah, if your child is, currently having support from a one-to-one para at school, what have you heard? I know some parents are saying that they would feel more comfortable if it would be online learning, but they're wondering about the possibility of a para coming to the home to provide some additional support. So as a family, you have to decide if, if that is something that you think health-wise would, be appropriate. I know for family, you just look at the parents, single parents that are working, two parent, that are working. It's like, what do you do with your kids if they're not allowed to go back to school? So it's like such a snowball, really. There's like so many things that can impact that, right? And so, yeah. So what else, what other ideas do you guys have for if somebody is getting one-to-one para support? I know one family that I was working with this spring. What they did is the teacher developed the lesson plans, and then the para did distance learning, actual instruction with the student one-on-one. So that's another possibility. The other kind of thing to think about is it going to be a para that already knows your child and already has a relationship, or our paras are going to be kind of reassigned according to where they need help in the school, where they need help on distance learning? All of these questions, I think it's important for you to ask your school. Ask your school district. It's July, but don't assume that people aren't going to answer their email. People are pretty much, usually administrators take a few weeks off in the summer. This summer, I don't know how much vacation administrators or teachers are going to get. So I would really encourage you to ask these questions now, because these are some things that they might not have thought of yet. And so if you have a concern with, my child usually gets one-on-one para support, I'm looking at, what is that going to look like in the fall? And start that conversation through email, through phone calls, because you want to start planting the seeds of what you think is going to work and what's not going to work for your child. The other thing I look at is, from the springtime, what did you learn? What worked well? What didn't work well? Go ahead and, summarize those points and send it in an email to the special ed teacher, your child's general ed teacher, the principal, the special ed director. You want to start the conversation about what the fall is going to look like. And so I think that that's really important, is to start getting your questions out there. Let's see. And Anita, let me see if I can bring up your comment here. She says, I'm seriously looking into getting a homeschool curriculum and trying to support my student the best you can. Yeah, and that's another good question. If people in the group have tried and have been successful with homeschooling, if there's certain homeschooling curriculum that you've used that you would recommend, that would be great to share in the comments or later in our group. I think there's going to be a number of families that decide homeschooling is going to be something that is the best fit for them. And so I think they're going to be exploring, right? Lots of different homeschool curriculums. So thanks for bringing that up, Anita. And if you guys have resources about homeschool curriculum, let us know. And Keisha says, I would love a parent or tutor to come into the home and assist, because it's so hard to do on our own, but they would need to be fully screened and tested. Yeah. And, that's the thing. I mean, they can be tested one day and it can take, 14 days for them to hear, if it's a negative or not. But then that doesn't mean like that later, they could, have COVID-19. So that's kind of the scary part too, right? Just because you're tested in, the beginning of August and it's negative, does that mean that pair is going to be negative in September or October? It's like those kinds of things, we don't have absolute answers for, right? But I think it's very reasonable for parents to request that they get some actual, what we look at as traditional homebound instruction, where somebody comes into the home. And I think, usually homebound instruction has, requirements like a note from the doctor, different things like that. And I think because of COVID-19, we can also look at having physicians write notes to the school, and then having an IEP meeting to request those homebound supports. Or you could kind of circumvent that and not call them homebound, but you could call them distance learning supports. And so there's usually a few ways to get around to what you need, what you want, what you think is best for your child, what your child needs. And so if you have questions about that, pop them in and we can brainstorm together, because I'm sure we have like wonderful input just from the people that are here with us. And so the whole purpose is that we're helping each other. We're generating ideas. It's not that I have all the answers, but I'm just like facilitating the conversation. So let us know what some of your ideas would be too. Hey, Marcy. She says, parents can look for homeschooling associations. Good idea. And their state and homeschooling groups on Facebook. There are many ways to homeschool that don't cost a ton of money buying curriculum. Yeah, that's a great idea. I'm not that familiar with homeschooling, but yeah, to look for homeschooling associations. And I can do a little more digging and post some resources in here. Every week, I email out a summary of our show and additional resources. So if you don't currently get my weekly emails, let me know. Send me a private message with your email address and I can add you to the list. But yeah, that's definitely one thing that I can be looking up and giving you guys some more resources for that. And Keisha says, I feel it's a gamble either way, unfortunately. At least only having one person in the home might be a lower risk than a classroom full of students. I'm anxious either way. Yeah, I hear you. It's one of those things where, at some point we need to make a decision, and then we need to have faith that that's going to work out well. One of the things I think that I've been reminding myself of this summer is to focus on what I want to have happen, and not to spend very much time in that worry zone and in that anxiety of what's this going to look like. My kids are out of school, but I have 4 grandkids. So I'm concerned about their learning and their safety and their health. As an advocate, I get relationships built with the families that I work with. You guys here on Facebook are trailblazers. It's like I have, that deep concern for your kids too. And so I try to remind myself when I start getting into that worry zone of I need to spend at least 17 seconds, and this has been researched. I need to spend at least 17 seconds focused on what positive results I want to see. And if I can focus on that for 17 seconds, then I try to do it for another 17 seconds. And so as many times as you can catch yourself, I think that makes a difference because we get what we focus on. And as a parent, it's really hard sometimes not to be in that anxiety and guilt and worry kind of zone. So that's my mental health tip for the day. So maybe that would be something good too. Why don't you share in the comments, how do you make it through the days? How do you stop that runaway mind of creating these pictures and movies of the disaster that's going to happen? How do you cut that off? How do you remain positive? We need more ideas. So let us know in the comments, what are ways that you can turn around that thinking? Susie says, my son loves to hug people and touch things. He doesn't understand masks and distancing. He constantly removes his mask. Even with social stories, he does not understand. Not really sure how to keep him safe in a school environment where other kids are high touch. Yeah, and I think, Susie, a lot of parents share that concern because a lot of kids are that way, like real social. And, especially I think after not seeing their friends and teachers for so many months, especially in the beginning of the year, they're going to want to run up and hug people, right? And that mask, depending on how long they're in school every day, I mean, that's going to be a challenge. There are some good social stories out there, and it sounds like you've tried using those. Sometimes it's just lots of repetition and lots of practice, and maybe it's just for real short periods of time, then there's a break, then we put it back on, and then we try to increase that time. But yeah, I mean, that's one of the challenges, is to get our kids to wear masks. So have you found any solutions for that? I've heard from other parents that sometimes the type of fabric that's used for the mask can make a difference. I think, you want to make sure it's got some kind of barrier to it, right? But there's some softer, more like jersey knit kind of fabric. And sometimes if that's lined with cotton, some kids are more, prone to use that. Or it can be reversed. You have the silky kind of smooth jersey on the inside and then the cotton on the outside. The other thing are a variety of, ties. So either a tie behind the neck or, the head, not behind the neck, Elastic, my son, we got some at the store that had like a hole that you just put over your ear. He likes that better. So I think trying a variety of different masks and different ties can help. So if you guys have found something that works for your kids, put that in the comments, because this is the whole idea of our forum here on our Facebook page, is that we share ideas with each other. Because you've probably discovered some aha moments of like, wow, why didn't I think of this earlier? And we want you to share those so other parents don't have to go through so much trial and tribulation, right? Let's see. Susie said, I see pictures from last year, and boy, did we stand so close. Getting out for a walk or bike has been helpful for emotional health. Ooh, thank you. Yes. And that, I appreciate those ideas, because I'm not one that usually thinks of physical activities for mental health. But when I do ride my bike, I just have a stationary bike that I do at home. That does like increase, right, the endorphins and everything, and it does help reduce stress. Going for long walks, playing sports, things like that, like outside, just having vitamin D, right? That has been helpful too for families. So yeah, getting outside, I think, makes a big difference. And Susie says, totally yes too. He hugs all his friends and adults. He's super affectionate and friendly and knows no strangers. I know, it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like maybe like plastic jumpsuits are going to be the answer. um, yeah, it's just really, it's a tough one, right? When your kid is used to, not even maybe hugging, but holding hands with friends or putting their arm around them, all of those kinds of things. If you have a hand sanitizer that has worked best, like some hand sanitizers have different kinds of odors. And for some kids that are sensitive to odors, you might think about that. Is there one that you found that works? Then you want to buy multiple bottles of that. And if your child is back in school, send that. So any little individualized things that you have found that works at home, please jot those down and start this summer sharing those with staff, because you don't want them to have to reinvent the wheel. If you've already discovered things that work and don't work, it's like, I don't know, an obligation, I feel like, and a responsibility for parents to share that with staff. So, what other topics or suggestions do you have? I know I've written a couple like little e-guides, and I've emailed them out before. If you haven't gotten them, let me know. I do have a guide about tips for online IEP meetings. I have a tip on writing effective emails, and there are 6 specific sentences to include to have your email be effective. If you don't have a copy of that, let me know. There's also a really good e-guide that I wrote about how parents can measure progress at home. So if you're looking at your child being at home in the fall, you might want a copy of that too. So let me know. And I'm also going to be writing some additional ones this summer. So if there's some specific topics that you're interested in, for sure, I'm going to have a new one out about distance learning plans, and looking at what are some critical components that you have in a good distance learning plan, because that's going to make a huge difference, I think, this fall. So yes, also my child did not adapt well at all in the digital learning and he has an IEP. Yeah. So then that information, if you haven't shared already with the staff, is really important. Are there going to be ways that they can change up what they did for distance learning? Like I know some school districts, it was mainly worksheets. If that's not working, especially when the worksheets don't have any accommodations to them, let the staff know and say, we tried this last spring, it didn't work, we need to come up with a better plan. And then if you have some specifics of what's worked well, then you need to share that. Sorry, I keep bumping my mic here. Share that with the staff too. Anne Marie, hey Anne Marie, she is here from South Carolina. Anyone hearing any suggestions for 4K or 5K through 12th grade has virtual learning opportunities, but nothing has been mentioned for preschool. Play-based learning from peers is so important. And you're right. And that's another topic I could research and find out some more information for you. And yeah, I mean, and especially for preschool age kids, I mean, you think about, people saying don't touch, your face, don't put things in your mouth. I mean, that's like really going to be hard for preschool teachers to control and to be able to sanitize everything, at least daily as far as materials and everything. So preschool, I don't know. I mean, I think you could do, I don't know, some Zoom kind of class meetings. I know for my grandson who was in kindergarten last year, they did some, like group class Zoom meetings, but it wasn't like any kind of instruction. It was more just sharing with each other or, kind of like a circle time kind of atmosphere. I mean, you could look at that. That is still one way that kids can see their friends, that they can still communicate, verbally be talking back and forth, using sign language, using their communication device, whatever. But just sometimes having that ability to see other friends is really important. But yeah, the play-based learning is so important for kids. And, for parents, then it's trying to figure out how can we replicate this at home. Ask your teachers for materials that would be helpful. I think, schools can be a lending library and, parents could check out, certain manipulatives or sets of materials for a certain amount of time. They be returned to the school sanitizes them, and then a different set could be out. So if that's something that you're interested in, let the staff know this summer. Can we have a lending library, a way of checking out manipulatives and different materials for our kids to use at home? That would be one way to try to simulate some play-based learning. Yeah, so Susie said, what's 4K? And she said preschool for age 4s before kindergarten. So I love all the things that are coming in and your comments. Know that other people are in your position too. It doesn't necessarily bring you answers. It can bring you comfort that you are not alone. I am all about trying to brainstorm out of the box thinking and ideas. And I love bouncing ideas off of each other. I think that's when we create another option. It's like, oh, look at this, or how about this? So keep the conversation going. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you taking your time from your day to join us and help each other out. Next week, I'm still working on the details of what our Thursday show will be like. But know that each Thursday at noon Mountain Time, we are here for you. Um, Thank you so much for everything that you do for your kiddos. And thank you for helping other parents also here. So until next Thursday, I am Charmaine Tanner. Take care, stay well, and keep washing those hands, right?